morning, or good evening. Welcome to the show. This is Psycho Silver. My name is Jerome. I do hope that today you're counting your wealth in ounces, and also that you're holding your word, especially to yourself. Thank you for joining me. This is a news show, and I got a whole bunch of news. Every evening, I spend a good chunk of time scouring the news for the most interesting material that I can find. Posts from Reddit and Twitter and news articles. Anything that I can find that I just think is interesting to bring to you. We'll do some videos mixed in there from all platforms. I like to cover the topics of sound money, what I call the dark psychology of money, how more and more we are becoming impulsive spenders, living paycheck to paycheck. And soon, perhaps, with the Great Reset, we'll be living deposit to deposit, under the CBDC to track, monitor, and trace everything that we do. Excuse me, sir, is that unpasteurized milk you have there? That's not approved. I don't think those eggs are from a licensed grower. We might have to knock down your carbon credits score this month for that. What kind of terrorist is growing eggs off the grid? I don't think those chickens are eco-friendly. Am I just hallucinating that all that is possible? I don't think so. Not at all. In fact, we are seeing the early movements towards this kind of system. Or will we have our great awakening in time? Will there be a great awakening to help mitigate or put a stop to this altogether? I have no idea, but that's what this show is about. Because I want to talk about the interesting stuff, not just the easy stuff. So, we are intellectually adventurous on this show, and we're going to speculate. And I love to speculate. So, join me, and we're going to jump into some news. Let's go. All right. I got a whole bunch of cool stuff to show you. And I'll just warn you before we really get into it. Sometimes different things, or I said things, but I meant themes. Sometimes different themes just kind of show up. And I'll tell you, on tonight's episode, there's a whole lot of fear porn. And so if the fear porn bothers you, this might not be the episode for you. And so sometimes I indulge in it, and other times I don't feel like I have time for it. But because this theme, it's like a coincidence or irony, I just kept finding a lot of fear porn tonight. So I said, okay, let's roll with it. It's related to the show anyways. And some of it's more outrageous than other things. And some of it's more believable. Well, some of it's super factual and others is pure speculation. But I just piled it in. So tonight's show is going to be like that. Just giving you fair warning. But let's jump right in. Check it out. I did first notice this tweet from the Black Swan, and I thought it was more ominous coming from a Black Swan. Breaking: Russia making preparations for what it says will be a false flag nuclear dirty bomb to be set off in Ukraine by Ukraine armed forces and blamed on Russia in order to escalate NATO's role in the war. And so already there, you got a pretty outrageous claim. So I said, okay, let's go and get a little more info on this. Let's see what we find. Of course, we did find something on RT here. And this says Russia warns France about Ukrainian dirty bomb risk. Moscow relayed concern about a possible false flag by Kiev. And so this is coming from the defense minister of Russia. And apparently they had a phone call. They had a phone call where the defense minister of Russia, who I guess keeps in touch with the French, and according to this article, they did have a phone call. And the Russian was warning against this situation, which is veering towards uncontrolled escalation. Well, that sure is a frightening combination of words there, veering towards uncontrolled escalation. And we do see here in this article, they cited a second source as saying there's potential for a dirty bomb or a low-yield nuclear weapon to be set off to launch a powerful anti-Russian campaign, and also claiming that the plan to do this was in its final stages, and that by making their intelligence public, they are seeking to thwart this operation. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. And somewhat on the same topic, I did find this interesting article. Here we have an article from the Stars and Stripes publication, of which I'm not very familiar with, but they are letting us know that the Air Force Reaper drones are about to begin surveillance flights out of Japan within weeks. And I have heard of these Reapers many times before. They're a pretty famous piece of equipment. And this article is just letting us know that there'll be a whole array of Reapers now flying throughout the Indo-Pacific, keeping surveillance, and that many of these are actually armed with Hellfire missiles and paveway laser-guided bombs, also stating that they carry ordnance of up to 3,000, ordnance of up to 3,000 pounds. And so there's a lot to say about that situation, just in the sense of right now it appears that North Korea is the junkyard dog and that they've likely come into possessions of nuclear weapons themselves. I'm old enough to remember when we were just making fun of North Korea with their bad missiles that always failed. I guess they're just trying to humiliate them. But apparently these weapons are becoming more and more sophisticated. And to me, it would seem like that could only happen with some help. And by who, I don't know. But the Reapers in the sky over the Indo-Pacific could be for many different reasons. We do know that Japan is the main wedge into that region in a counter to China, whether conflict breaks out over Taiwan or we have North Korea potentially doing something very dangerous. So it is pretty much just Japan, and we're very friendly with South Korea, but a lot of problems in that area of the world and a lot of speculation as to whether China does try and take Taiwan. And so given the size of the economy and the strategic location of Japan, that's easily our most important ally we have right now, especially after losing Saudi Arabia. But this is not my area of expertise, and I'm super just speculating and also just reading the article. So that's about all I gotta say on that one, but very interesting. But while we are on the topic of Japan, there's been new developments in the Japanese bond market. They had been working very hard with the government and the Bank of Japan, working together to really keep those bond yields at a specific percentage. It was 0.25. They were really trying to peg it to that area. But we do see that with that situation, I think someone called it, and everyone's in the same situation between the rising yields and inflation. I heard someone say that it was a clown car bouncing off the rails of inflation and rising yields. One or the other, pick your poison. But Bank of Japan over here has picked their poison, and they've gone with trying to peg the yield, also known as yield curve control. But we do see from this chart here, they had a major disturbance in the value of the currency here. And this big red line here, that was their attempt to intervene. And they issued a statement at the same time. They issued a statement at the same time as this intervention. And you can see that big bar there. But what's very concerning is the way that it just bounced right back. That is how a currency rapidly losing its value looks to me. That's what I would expect to see. But we'll look at a few more tweets about that. Here, Gold Telegraph writes, Japan likely spent more than $30 billion last week to prop up the yen. Japan has signaled that they have limitless funds to defend the country's currency. Here's one from First Squawk that says, excessive FX moves based on speculation absolutely cannot be tolerated. And you can see easily here that they're also masters of frame control and propaganda, calling it moves based on speculation. It's like more like moves based on logic and math, moves based on laws of nature, economic laws of nature. Here Deso Got a Vision wrote, all the Japanese finance ministry has done so far is offer flash sales to the shorts. Ouch. Again, with the second tweet from Deso Got a Vision here, he writes, we're off to another exciting week. The USD JPY tagged 149 and is up 0.88 on the day. And here's with he's got the GTA meme. Oh shit, here we go again. And we will close the thread on this one with a tweet from Rafi Faber here. He writes, the entire world is crazy as flarg. Boys are girls and girls are boys, and I love it. The crazier the world gets, the closer we are to the end game. Bring it on. Whether I survive it or not, I'm ready for it. Let's end this sucker. All right, next up, I wanted to show you a couple clips from an interesting interview I watched over the weekend. And I don't want to take too much material from this interview, but there's two key pieces that I really think that you need to see. We'll keep it to like a minute and a half or 2 minutes each, but you got to check this out. And if you're not familiar with who this guy is, this is Bill Holter, and he's a precious metals expert of some sort. I know he's a dealer, but he's been on all these sound money shows for a long time, basically predicting what we're living through right now, especially with the sovereign debt crisis, especially with inflation, especially with the dangers of running up so much debt. And when that finally runs into higher interest rates, what that does. But I'll let him explain for himself. And he is here on the Greg Hunter's USA Watchdog show. So I do encourage you to go check out the full interview. But I got two of the best parts for you right here.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
Your mortgage, and talk about your mortgage was your analogy about that.
Well, for sure, we're already in a recession. I mean, we're now in the third quarter of negative growth, and I think it's laughable when you hear people trying to put odds on whether or not we're going to go into a recession, because it's obvious that we are already in a recession. And yes, rates rising. I mean, that has absolutely frozen the real estate market. So if you own a piece of property, who's going to buy it? I mean, rates have gone from 3.25% to over 7% now. And I was on the record saying that once we hit a 3% yield on the 10-year Treasury, that then at that point you would start to see tightness in credit. Now we're over 4%. And what few people are talking about is what is this doing, or what has this already done to derivatives? Every derivative that's ever been written has an interest rate assumption within it. So interest rates going from, actually, if you go from the lows, I think the low on the 10-year Treasury was under 1%. So here we are at 7%. What has that done to the derivatives? And think about how big the derivatives market is. I mean, the total credit worldwide is over 350 trillion, but you've got derivatives pushing 2 quadrillion. The derivatives, I've said this all along, derivatives will blow up. Warren Buffett has called them financial weapons of mass destruction. They are bigger, far bigger than anything that central banks can fix.
There you have it. That was a really key piece from the interview. And I do want to also help you with the visual about the derivatives here. Here we do have a nice visual on the derivatives. This is called Exter's chart, if you didn't know. And I'm very pleased to show you this if you've never seen it. But you can see here on the top. And I know this particular chart is kind of outdated. I've been saying 1 quadrillion, but whether it's 1 quadrillion or 2 quadrillion, it's an unfathomable number either way. But you do see that here, these are on the top of the pyramid because it is the largest and riskiest asset class. And in the event of a hyper bubble collapsing or exploding or whatever you want to call it, this would be the first to go and it would be impossible to stop. And that is basically what Bill Holter is calling for there. Whether you believe it or not, is that doom porn? I honestly, on this one, I think not. So there you have it, Exter's pyramid and 1 or 2 quadrillion dollars in derivatives. Also, now let's move back over to this interview and I'm going to show you the other really important part. Let's have a look at this. Okay, we should be good to start it from about right here. Let's
Republican,
go.
But the Democrats clearly want to destroy America. But I wanted to kind of delve into this whole this credit thing. I mean, this is so bad. You were telling me in the pre-interview, I'm not sure we'll have an election. Talk about that. You don't know whether or not it's a toss-up. Talk about how bad this could get.
Right. Probably I don't know, 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, I came to the conclusion that in my opinion, the odds of having an election are slightly less than a toss-up. And I still believe that. And the reason being, those who are in power now understand that there's an absolute wave coming, and they're going to be swept out of office. These people will not give up power willingly. So that's my thought process or reasoning why I believe it's, even with 3 weeks left, I believe it's still better than a coin flip that we do not have an election. For what reason will they use? I have no idea. But again, I do believe there will be some type of false flag within the next 3 weeks, and they'll be able to say, well, we can't have elections.
Oh, there we did. Let's slip into the show. I wish I would have stopped it just a hair sooner. He said the F word. He said the double F word. I don't know if that's still on the super naughty list, but oh well, we'll live with it. Okay. If that wasn't doomy enough, I got some more doomy news for you.
1,000 troops to the European theater, taking the total there to around 100,000. And many of those troops are in Eastern Europe. Only on CBS Mornings, we're getting a look at the U.S. forces closest to the fighting in Ukraine, supporting NATO allies and sending a very clear message to Russia. Charlie D'Agata is in Romania for us this morning. Charlie, good morning.
Good morning, Tony. Romania is now home to the 101st Airborne Division. It's the first time it's been headquartered here in Europe in nearly 80 years. This is some of the equipment they brought from home, a 777 howitzer, ready to roll at any minute. They're specifically trained to deploy on any battlefield in the world within hours.
Go, 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 go!
Ready to fight. The reason one of America's most elite air assault divisions has been sent right here, right now. We join Deputy Commander Brigadier General John Lubis and Colonel Edwin Mathaidis, commander of the 2nd Brigade Combat Team, on board a Black Hawk helicopter for an hour's chopper ride to the very edge of NATO territory, around 3 miles from the border with Ukraine. From the start of the war, Russia advanced from Crimea along the Black Sea to Kherson, aiming to capture port cities like Mykolaiv and Odessa to landlock Ukraine. We're right about here.
We're ready to defend every inch of NATO soil. Why is it necessary?
There you have it. Willing to defend every inch of NATO soil. I have not, to my knowledge, has NATO been invaded. Ukraine is not NATO, but here we go again, just inching closer into direct conflict. Very, very concerning where this can go. I'd prefer that we just stay out of this, but what do I know? I'm not a banker, right? And here I do have some more doom porn for you. That's the theme. I told you I would deliver. This is slightly funny doom porn. And we do see here the morning brew, or what I wrote is some omens seem more powerful than others. But the baseball omens, those are remarkable. The baseball omens, we should really respect those because they seem like they come true more often. Here we do have a tweet from the morning brew who writes, over the past 100 years, the sure sign of an oncoming financial crisis has been the Philadelphia-based baseball team winning the World Series. And we saw in the 1929, we had the Athletics, 1980, the Phillies, 2008 Phillies, and here we are, 2002. And I believe that this is not over, but the Phillies are in the big one. So does this mean we're cheering for them to lose, right? Here we have a tweet from William Middlecoop, and this is a guy whose opinion I just really respect. I really enjoy his interviews. And he's writing the sovereign debt crisis. It'll be close now. We're almost there. And here we got a funny meme about that. They don't know the sovereign debt bubble is bursting. Only few people would get this meme. Here we have a tweet from Doomberg. Doomberg writes, on September 22nd, 2022, the Bank of Japan intervened to support the yen for the first time in 24 years. And here, just 30 days later, they're doing it again. And how long before the next one? And also, I just would remind everyone, this is important to me. I don't know quite how it fits in, but I know that it's important. You do see here that Japan holds a lot of US debt. And let's just have a closer look here. Of the top, so we know specifically of the Swiss, the UK, China to some extent, and especially now Japan, we know that these nations that are holding large amounts of US debt, surprise, surprise, are some of the first to really seem like they're flying off the rails with this whole interest rate yields deal going on, causing problems. We have such an interesting relationship with Japan. And I was doing a little bit of reading on Japan, and they're just so important to us. After World War II, it was a complete surrender, and we basically gutted the entire government except for the symbolic emperor at the time. And our first move was to demilitarize Japan. But we found out that that was probably not the best idea, because we actually needed a strong Japan in that area to counter against the communists, right? And so eventually I believe that we had to convince them to remilitarize. But an interesting thing, I guess this is always what happens. We went to get in there and control their culture to our liking, but they also came into ours, especially with the manufacturing, and they set a whole global standard for great manufacturing. And to this day, we all know and recognize their electronics and their cars. I drive a Toyota myself, and I couldn't imagine driving anything else. I really like the Toyota. What does it all mean though? Japan is the third largest economy in the world, and it's very notable that they have been pretty much ahead of the pack in their experimentation with modern monetary theory. And that basically, to me, what that means is you have a central bank heavily involved in the issuance of currency. They do not allow free markets. They do try and control the economy, but keep it quasi-capitalist. But they're all about injecting massive amounts of money for permanent growth. They're just permanently trying to grow. And it's especially difficult given that their population is shrinking. At the same time, they have an aging demographic of people. And really, possibly in a way, Japan and where they go is going to be a glimpse into our future, because they ended up kind of the cutting edge, and they seem to be a few years ahead of us in the policies that they institute. At least that's my take on it. But anyways, I digress. Here we have another ominous tweet from the great Marti. He writes, "It won't be long, won't be long." And I do have for you the most extreme example of fear porn, and it could only come off of the Chans. And I'm just going to go ahead and read this to you. Don't believe it, but I thought it was scary, interesting. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be covering this, but I'm going to do it anyways because it's provocative. Here we have one anonymous user, right? "I'm acutely clairvoyant since childhood. I don't have abilities on a whim, nor can I see the future. What happens is I have experiences, more intense dreams, nausea, and a sense of claustrophobia. When a big event is going to happen, I get hints daily. Some would say synchronicities, but mine are pronounced to the point where other people in my life see them too. They're not remotely explainable. One of the biggest and rarest experiences for me is a paranormal event by the way of UFOs. Yesterday was my first contact in over a decade. It was deliberate, and I filmed it. And I was spoken to in 3 words. Look up here. I filmed the entire event. Let's just say that. Before yesterday, I had a month of intense dreams and symbols. I watched the filling. The synchronicities were off the charts. I meditated for the first time in a while, and I am getting clear on what I'm sensing. A catastrophic event will happen soon. My sense is within America, but it's tied to war or political events around the war. The event will be physically harmful to people rather than political. I sense shock and a feeling of chaos, a feeling of turning in the world order, or exposing of it. It will push people over their limit. It will push people over their limit of what they can take and cause severe anger, so much that people will riot. I sense a period of darkness and confusion, more so than what's happening now. And it will alter beliefs and political thought for certain. I'm only saying this because I haven't had this feeling in a long while. Not this intense or urgent. I'm sorry, I cannot be more specific. I just wanted to throw it out there. And allegedly, this picture here is related in some way, but they don't know how. I don't know, guys. It seems like a bunch of bullshit, but given the nature of what's already popping up, I said, hey, let's have a thought experiment. Let's do something weird. All right, on to the next thing. Here we had an interesting tweet from Elon Musk that really caught my attention. He asks, who decides what's the current thing? It's a real question because I don't know. And I'm asking, hey, is this 4 a.m. talking points? Do you know what the 4 a.m. talking points are? Do you know where that comes from? Really interesting. But it does seem like every night or maybe once a week, suddenly it happens, or should I say it happens overnight. But it appears like most mornings, most of your mainstream news media outlets and many politicians, and I would say prominent celebrities, they're all coming out at the same time with the same buzzwords, with the same catch lines, with the same themes. And it happens over and over. And to me, this is just Elon asking like, hey, I've noticed this too. It's kind of crazy that there always seems like there's a new thing and you don't know exactly where it comes from, but it seems pretty controlled. At least that's the way I see it. And I wouldn't say that it's really viral because a lot of times it just appears. It's not something that you see trending overnight on Twitter or something that slowly catches fire and becomes the new big topic. It usually does feel like it just appears overnight and then that's the new thing that everyone has to talk about and pay attention to. Am I wrong about that? How do you feel about that? What do you think? Speaking of painful events, speaking of painful events that are going to hurt a lot of people, here we do have a Bitcoin chart. And this is a different Twitter user. Same chart, different user, same chart. We've been looking at this same chart for a minute now. And we do just have this wedge getting longer and longer. Hurry up and wait, I think that it's called. And this gentleman is also calling for a breakout to the downside. He writes, given the inflation, the impending exit is likely to be bearish. I thought inflation was supposed to make Bitcoin go up. Yeah, I'm calling down. I'm calling way down on this thing. And here, we're just going to keep it spooky all night. Check this out. This is Katy Perry. And let's get some sound. Katy Perry clone malfunction. Check this out, guys. Oh, it got all skippy. Let's try this again.
Make even more noise for my band.
Yeah, I hope the sound isn't cutting off. Maybe I need to talk over this to make sure that it doesn't cut out, but you do see she's having some sort of issue with her eye here. See that one closing? I know this person here is joking that it's a clone malfunction, which is pretty freaking hilarious, but I do see that more as having some sort of a condition. And we did see that who's the other famous person? I believe it was Justin Bieber had a very similar reaction, but they never really tied it to this thing. It was not supposed to be that thing, but there was a lot of speculation that it was that thing. But I don't know, since we're keeping it spooky, right? On to the next thing. And this one, I didn't really quite know where to fit into the show, but I just wanted to show it to you because it was really interesting. Here we have Danielle DiMartino. She's responding to somebody and she's saying, deflation is right now being baked into prices. See used cars, home prices. And this is response to another tweet that says inflation right now being baked into prices. So she's making the counterpoint. And the only right answer is Don Durrett has the right answer. And this is not the first time I've heard this, but this is really brilliant. This is true. This is what stagflation is. Remember we were talking about stagflation? Well, here you have it. Don Durrett writes, inflation in the stuff that you need, deflation in the stuff that you want. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Brilliant. And I did hit him with the well played, sir. And that is another reason where I am just so convinced that commodities is a place to be, especially the stuff that's indispensable. And right here, I do have one final piece of doom porn for you this evening. It's been a great show, very spooky. Hopefully we get some better news and we can talk about that. But I did want to understand this Chinese chip situation a little better and what's going on with that. And I just came across a really good article. It's a question and answer that kind of explains the situation. So I'll read a few key parts to you. And then if you think that it's interesting, you can go and find the rest for yourself. So here we have a publication called The Market. And it is an interview of Jonathan Goldberg, who's a partner at Snow Cloud Capital. And again, this is about the Chinese, the Biden chip ban, the microchip semiconductor ban that they placed upon the Chinese, and a little more details on that. I wanted to know about this, so very glad I found this article. Here they ask him, what does it mean for this tech standoff between the US and China in general? And his response is that it's clear that the primary objective is to limit the ability of the People's Liberation Army to obtain more advanced technologies. And that makes sense from a national security standpoint. China is an adversary and the US government wants to curtail its capacity. And he gets into more detail here that this isn't supposed to be aimed at your run-of-the-mill computer chips that everyone has access to. These are supposed to be the super high-end chips, semiconductors, and the chips that would be used for AI or supercomputers or nano computing. And here they're asking him, since he knows the Chinese tech sector, how do you assess the US government's restrictions from a historical perspective? And he's answering here that it's really bizarre because a lot of these restrictions, they have a cold era vibe to them, but it doesn't work that well because now our economies are so interdependent. And that is the big problem, is that we have China manufacturing all kinds of stuff for us, and we're still trying to put restrictions upon the high-end stuff. But that's a lot harder to do when you're importing and exporting, right? And also at the same time, it appears they're trying to maintain some capacity of production in China, but they're also just trying to keep it out of the hands of the people that they don't approve of. So there's a list. There's a list of these are the approved and these ones here are unapproved. And they're working really hard to make that list airtight so they can really control who gets access to the technology of the chips and also who can participate in the manufacturing of the chips. But once again, these are super special chips that could be used in weapons or perhaps devices that would be used to break encryption on the stronger computing, I meant to say the more sophisticated types of computers and computing processes. Oh, and here, this is really important. They asked, what does it mean for SMIC, which is China's largest and most advanced semiconductor foundry? And he responds that this is a big question. The SMIC is able to mass produce 14 or 16 nanometer nodes, but it's very hard for them to get smaller than the 14 nanometers because you need extreme ultraviolet lithography technology. And I do know something about this. This special piece of the technology is being created in the Netherlands and imported into China. So they're not actually making the technology they need there in China. They're importing it from the Netherlands. But he's also making the point, although they're not going to be able to get them from the source that they typically do get them from, he does feel like it's probably just a matter of time before one of the academic institutions in China will give their try at trying to build this technology themselves. But it won't be commercial for quite a while. So even if they can make it, it's not going to be mass produced, not quite yet, but you're just delaying the inevitable apparently. And he's also speculating right here that it would probably take 10 years. If we were able to completely cut China off, it would probably take them 10 years to catch up to the leading edge of the technology, which is interesting because I'll just tell you, I'm not very knowledgeable in this sort of stuff, but I did think they were pretty much already on the leading edge. And so I'm kind of surprised that it was Biden's call to make this happen. But the problem is that this is really opening the door to unrestricted economic warfare, which how that actually works in economies that are so interconnected, I have no idea. But that it's a pretty aggressive move and is going to make a lot of waves the way they're doing this. And here, the very last part, I'm glad if you're still here watching this to learn this, because I just learned this right now. It really is in Taiwan that the most advanced semiconductor fabrication is happening. So even Samsung, this gentleman's claiming is a far second to the fabrication quality and capability is to the, what is that called? The TSMC. And these are the plants, the fabrication plants that are coming out of Taiwan. And here he is stating that it's very unlikely that Taiwan is ever going to let that technology off of their island, that there's a lot of pressure for them to go ahead and open labs in other parts of the world, but there's just no way they're going to let that happen. And also making the point, we're learning so much right now, making the point that this TSMC, the company that is making these semiconductor chips, is so important that basically the US government sees it as a strategic asset. And that puts us in a really tenuous situation with China, because they're also wanting to get their hands on that. But it's a delicate situation, and we have to, and he's making the point that we should probably worry, because in totally cutting China off from having these advanced chips and semiconductors, that if they're in a situation where they're basically already getting nothing and the glass is completely empty, well, then they almost have nothing to lose by going after Taiwan and trying to capture this business. Very eye-opening, very eye-opening. And with that, I do hope that that was an interesting and informative and entertaining show. Pretty scary shit. Thank you for joining me on this doom porn mission of Psycho Silver. I thought it was a good show. I do hope you enjoyed it. With that, I do thank you for going along with me on this journey. And I very sincerely hope that you are in good health. And if you're not in good health, that you get better soon. And we'll have another episode of Psycho Silver coming up tomorrow. And so I'll see you then. You have a good morning or a good night. Take care.